Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland, and tonight we have two really amazing guests. We have Steve Mera and Barry Fitzgerald. We'll get to their bios and who they are, but you might already know who they are. We're going to talk about some stuff. I think I've definitely got to get a little Q&A on the Peruvian, I hate even calling them mummies, whatever you want to call them. They did go down there and investigate that, so I know they have a little bit to say, but they got so much more. Both of them have stellar careers in the paranormal field, and have a lot of experience, so there's a lot to talk about tonight. It is only a 2-hour show. We are getting, probably by November, going to start doing 3-hour shows on a regular basis. And, of course, what we do every Sunday night is the World Wide Web of Weird. We got some good stuff for that. And we will take phone calls at the second half of the show as well. All right, let's get going with the show. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Joining me, as well as every Sunday night, is my beautiful co-host, Jamie D. Let's go ahead and get her up on screen. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Hi, Jason. Doing good. Excited to be here tonight.
Yeah, we got some amazing guests tonight. I wish they had a flight to catch. I'm sure they could talk for 3 hours, but they do have, one of them, I think, has a flight to catch. So we're only doing a 2-hour show. We are starting to move into 3-hour shows. Like I said, probably by November we'll be moving on into that. All right, and Rob's not here with us. He might join us later, and we should just go ahead and get rolling into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, this is the first one from Unexplained Mysteries. I like to use this website a lot. They have really short, concise articles because I don't have a lot of time to talk about these interesting things, but they get to the point. This one is a lake of liquid water discovered on Mars. This is the first one I want to start with, and we're kind of going to end on the moon and Mars at the end of this segment. So let's go ahead and roll into this. Scientists believe they have identified a body of water situated beneath the planet's solar polar ice cap. For people listening on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, we are also a webcast. You can watch us at our Facebook page, Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we play videos and show photos and all that stuff. But we try to do the theater of the mind, too. I try to narrate it the best I can in my stumbling buffoon way. I was hitting the wrong buttons already tonight on my music. But you can watch at Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, or just listen. For people that watch on Facebook, we do play copyrighted music out to Late Night in the Midlands, so when we go to commercial break, you will hear some quiet. Don't freak out. All right, this is, while Mars is known to have been covered in lakes, rivers, and oceans in the distant past, this is the first time that evidence has been found of a pre-existent body of liquid water in present day. It's probably not very large lake, said a study professor Robert Rossi, butchered that, from the Italian National Institute of Astrophysics. Discovered using a special radar instrument, the ESA Mars Express orbiter, the lake is thought to be around 12 miles across and at least 1 meter deep. This really qualifies this as a body of water, said Professor Osori. I'm not going to bother to butcher that name anymore. A lake, not some kind of meltwater, so filling some space between rock and ice, as it happens at certain glaciers on Earth. It remains unclear what sort of conditions might be found in the lake. However, in order to remain liquid in such cold temperatures, likely to contain very large amounts of salt. We're not close to actually detecting life, said Dr. Manish Patel from Open University. But what this finding does give us is the location of where to look on Mars. It's also like a treasure map. Except in this case, there will be lots of X's marking the spot. They got to find water. If they want to send people there, they're going to have to find a way to get water. Sounds like it'd be very salty, muddy sludge, probably of some kind, but it's a good sign. It's a good sign. All right, moving on. This is kind of freaky. This is from SiberianTimes.com. Sun blacked out in Arctic. Local north of Yukata, I probably butchered that, said daylight was completely gone for several hours. People from the remote Ivano, Beniski, and Silinginsky, but 2 words I'm butchering, districts turned to newspapers, begging local media to explain the delivery of what happened. The remote communities were plunged into the darkness, even though they should have 24 hours light at this time of year. The sun went out around 11 a.m. and it didn't come back until about 2 p.m. I couldn't see a thing without switching lights on. We took torches to the walk outside, but actually no one wanted to be on the street because the feeling was as if something heavy was in the air and was pressing on your chest, said one resident. After the sun returned, locals found a thick layer of dust covering everything outside. Water in open street barrels turned into a dirty mess. Water in lakes went black because of the dust, said one eyewitness. Sun wasn't visible in 2 neighboring districts in the extreme north of the Yukata, but no other area of the Republic reported the cataclysm. We wondered if this was an eclipse, but it can't be something witnessed only by 2 districts. Normally, before any eclipse, the air temperature drops 3 to 0.4 degrees centigrade, and true, that morning was cooler than usual, but the other area is also always quite cold, so we didn't pay special attention. Let's see, this article goes on and read more, but I find it interesting. I don't know what blacked out. They thought maybe a forest fire could have caused it, but there's also some residents who dispute the ash story, say there was no ash or dust. Maybe it was in certain areas. But man, imagine waking up, you're expecting to see the sun. You know, this place does get to that 24-hour period where they don't have the sun where they're at, but they know when that's going to happen. Imagine waking up when you expect to see the sun and it just is not there. That, to me, would be frightening. Let's move on. This story interests me because from my childhood, from an instance I have, 42,000-year-old worms revived in Russia. I'll explain in a minute why this story interests me. The roundworms, which were collected from 2 different regions of Siberia, have been frozen since the Pleistocene age before being brought back to life in petri dishes at the lab near Moscow. Out of 300 worms collected for the study, only 2 of them showed signs of life. That's not really good. So 2 out of 300. Wow. We've obtained the first data demonstrating the capability of multicellular organisms for long-term cryobiosis and permafrost deposits of the Antarctic, or the Arctic, sorry. The breakthrough means that these worms are likely to be the oldest living animals on the planet. Our data demonstrates the ability of multicellular organisms to survive long-term, tens of thousands of years in cryobiosis under the conditions of natural cryoconservation, the scientist wrote. It's obvious that this ability suggests that the Pleistocene nematodes, probably butchered that, have some adaptive mechanism that may be scientific and practical importance. If their survival mechanism can be isolated and understood, it could prove invaluable to find also bodies of well-discovered life and other forms on other worlds, and maybe figure out how to hibernate people. I don't know. But what interests me is when I was a little kid, I had this interest with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and reviving the dead. When I was a little kid, kids at my grade school called me a mad scientist. Yes. And one time I decided to freeze some worms and see if I could revive them. I'm not joking. And I remember my mom finding this like frozen block of worms in the freezer going, what in the heck is this? And I left, it was like in there for years. I forgot all about it. Oh, but they didn't come back to life. They ended up in the garbage. Okay, let's move on. All right, number 4, this one. Now, I got the Fox News article, but I saw a number of other articles that took a little more different twist than Fox News did on this. But an Oregon woman recently came home to an unusual surprise, a mountain lion, which continued taking a nap for 6 more hours behind her sofa. Imagine coming into your living room and just finding a mountain lion chilling on your couch. What's up, dude? like some, like drunk bum that ends up in your house. The odd encounter took place on July 8th in Ashland, Oregon, home of Lauren Taylor. After drinking from a pond in Taylor's backyard, the cat likely entered her home through an open back door, she explained in a Facebook post, which garnered more than 17,000 reactions and shares on Tuesday morning. Hold on, my article's going weird on me. Come on now. This is wild, she wrote. The door was open and the room was huge. The room has huge plants and stairs built around tree branches, so she likely didn't even realize she was walking indoors until she was inside. After entering the home, the cat was startled by Taylor's roommate, who screamed upon seeing the mountain lion. This prompted the wild animal to hide behind the sofa, where it snoozed for several hours. wasn't that frightened, decided to go take a nap. Taylor made a noise, but her friend was, right? Taylor made a noise to wake the feline, but then it gazed levelly into her eyes and communicated using feline speak, eye blinking to calm her, she wrote. There's more to it than that. Another article has talked about she uses telepathy to get this lighting out. It was amazing to realize that this worked. I gazed levelly, then blinked hard, and then she did it back. Taylor continued, adding that the cat then went back to sleep. She clearly felt safe, and she showed no inclination to leave. When the cat awoke a second time, Taylor said she again connected in a loving gaze. She just stared into his eyes and communicated trust through blinking. That's about all I probably could do if a mountain lion was right there. I'd probably just be blinking, but it'd be blinks of terror.
All cats do that because that's what their mother cat does to show them that it's okay. And I do
So,
that with mine. They catch your eye, and you can actually hypnotize them that way.
so you gotta like blink really fast, or just blink a couple times, or
You just catch your eye, and they
never heard
catch
that.
yours, and you slowly do it, and they do it back.
Wow, never heard that before. And I read this article, like blinking. They talk about telepathy in these other articles. With just a couple hours to dawn, Taylor decided it was time to prompt her to leave without alarming her so much that she panicked. The Oregon woman then used a drum to encourage the lion to exit the home. She roused and knew just what to do, walking out through the open doors, through the yard, across the creek, and through the empty field behind us, exactly as we had shown her, said Taylor, adding she has extensive experience with working with energy and animals. Yeah, see, Fox kind of glides over. That's what I find interesting. That's why I chose this article, the way they glide over. If you go find, there's other articles, they talk more and more in interviews with her about her telepathy with animals and stuff like that. It's really interesting. All right, let's move on. All right, number 5, I don't have an article. This is a UFO video. I wish I could play the audio of it, but I think if I remember right, there's a slight whisper of some little bit of swearing in the background. And I would be swearing louder than whispering. And I'd probably be that crazy guy in the Twilight episode, like telling people to look out the window. Because, I want to see another UFO. I've seen a UFO, but the last place I want to see a UFO is while I'm riding on a plane. This was taken on July 9th, 2018 at 10:49 a.m., filmed at about 35,000 feet over Nevada, traveling towards LAX. It was submitted July 26th to MUFON case 93655. That's all I have on it. But I find this video, and it's like a 5-minute long video. Just type in that case number 93655 on YouTube, MUFON. You'll find this video, and it has some really interesting stuff. And we're definitely not doing it justice on here when we share it. Sometimes the lighting doesn't give it, but you can see it. There's these 3 objects in the clouds. They're filming out the plane window. I wish I could play their audio, but I'm afraid to. If I remember right, there is some swearing. But you hear them talking about it. I don't think this is CG. I think it's the real deal. Maybe it's misidentification. Somebody said maybe it's something on the ground reflecting into the sky, and there's moisture in the sky. I don't know, but you see at one point, I did fast forward it to the video where it looks like a little round object flies out of one of them and like kind of flies into the other one at one point. I don't know if you can really see it on here because the lighting, it's kind of like a little too bright or something, the contrast. It's just the screen share. But check it out. It is really incredible. But then again, like I said, if I was in a plane, this is not the time I'd want to be seeing a UFO. I want to see another UFO. Now that I got a cell phone where I could record it myself, yeah, here it is. Yeah, it was right at that point. I might have missed it in the edit. Yeah, there's like a little object flying around the other one. And they even like commented on it in the video. It's really, it's, I don't believe this is CG or shenanigans. I think it's something really, really strange. So if you're in Nevada, maybe flying through the air, look out. All right, let's move on. You know how much I love the moon. The idea that maybe aliens are on the moon, that's one of my things. This is another one from Unexplained Mysteries, but this has to do with the moon 4 billion years ago. Was the moon habitable 4 billion years ago? A new study has highlighted 2 periods in the moon's distant past when it may have actually supported life. The barren lunar landscape may not seem like the most promising place to look for life today. However, a new study has indicated that billions of years ago, conditions may have been very different. In the study by Professor Dirk Schulz-Makak, really butchered that, I'm sure, from Washington State University, and Professor Ian Crawford, much easier name, from the University of London, proposed that during 2 specific periods, approximately 3.5 to 4 billion years ago, the moon was spewing out so much superheated volatile gas that it may have supported conditions needed for primitive life forms to thrive. If liquid water and significant amounts of atmosphere were present earlier from the moon for long periods of time, we think the lunar surface would have been at least transiently habitable. There's also evidence to suggest the moon during these times had a magnetosphere, a protective magnetic field that deflects deadly radiation from the sun. While the two scientists don't believe life would have been arisen independently on the moon, they do believe that a meteorite could have transported life there from Earth. Interesting. What is also viral about the moon is Buzz Aldrin. We're going to play this video here really quick because we don't want to run out of time. Go ahead and play the video. This is Buzz Aldrin. Everybody's talking about this video, and I think this interview is from a couple of years ago, but it's suddenly gone viral because everybody says it's proof that Buzz Aldrin says we never landed on the moon, and I kind of dispute that a little. And you're muted on my end, Jeff, on the Hangouts, so make sure you're on mute so you can hear it. No, this is the wrong video. This is the video where he punches a guy. I'll get to that. I'll get to that. We'll play the other one. Little 8-year-old girl asks Buzz a question.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know what I think we know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it's been so. In the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going. But I think I know. Because we didn't.
All right, you stop the video there. You know, everybody's saying that's him saying we didn't ever went to the moon. I honestly think it's what he's trying to say is, you know, not that we didn't ever go, that we didn't go back. Why didn't we go back? I think he's just, the words are mixed around a little bit the way he's, you know, trying to tell this 8-year-old girl. I don't think he's saying we never went. I think what he's trying to hint at is why we didn't go back. He goes, yeah, I think I know, but he won't say. I think what he wants to hint at or wants to say is maybe because of aliens. I'm just saying. Honestly think that's what a lot of these astronauts have struggled with that went to the moon over the years, that they know this truth and they can't say it. That's just my belief. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think Buzz Aldrin was trying to say we never went to the moon. I think he was trying to say there's a reason why we didn't go back, and we should know what that reason is. And just to point that fact out, you know, I would also like to point out, you know, I don't think he would say that because you remember the time he punched a guy for accusing him of not going to the moon?
Well, you can put it on your shoulder. Don't be shy. You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself. Away from me. You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
Love it. Decked him in the face. You know, if you're going to call somebody a liar and say all that stuff, be prepared. You might get punched in the face. But that's it for the World Wide Web Weird. That's all I got. But I thought that was interesting. I love Buzz Aldrin. I was a kid. I love NASA. And yeah, I do know now that they most likely lie to us about a lot of stuff. But it still doesn't take away my boyhood love for NASA and astronauts and the right stuff and people like Buzz Aldrin. Our guests tonight are awesome as well. Steve Mera and Barry Fitzgerald. We will have them on after this commercial break. Don't freak out. We do play music out to Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network that you cannot hear on Facebook, so it does get a little quiet for a minute, and then you'll hear commercials. And then we'll be back with our guests, Steve Mera and Barry Fitzgerald. We're going to talk about a lot of things tonight in a very short period of time. It goes by so fast. All right, guys, we'll be right back with you in just a few minutes. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guests are Barry Fitzgerald and Steve Mera. Irish-born Barry Fitzgerald has nearly 30 years of experience within the world of the supernatural, which he has known and has taken him to new levels of intrigue and mystery. Appearing on all 56 episodes of Ghost Hunters International, he headed a team on the American NBC-owned SyFy network and explored a quandary of paranormal and supernatural phenomena around the globe. He is recognized for his work in the paranormal world and received the award-winning Paranormal TV Personality of the Year 2016 from the PSW based in the Netherlands. His natural progression led to the writing and publishing of books on subjects within his field of research, such as The Complete Approach, The Influence, My Home is Haunted, Now What, In the Mist of Gods, Banshees Searching the Sídhe, and I'd probably butcher that, but I'm interested to ask him about the Banshee thing. I had my own Banshee experience. And of course, Legend Seekers. A new exciting trilogy of fiction began in 2015, which includes the novellas The Council of Three, The Malice of Darkness, and The Fractured, which were released in March 2017. He's also an avid photographer. He opened a gallery exhibition in the Ukraine in 2011. The collection has been displayed The Beauty at Night, An Unseen Naked Eye, and highlighted the nature of the supernatural world. Barry's new line of research has taken him out of his comfort zone in areas of Irish myth, legend, and folklore, which is something I'd love to talk about tonight. We only have so much time. Our other guest is Steve Mera. He's UK's most respected researcher in the realms of ufology, unexplained and supernatural, with over 1,000 hours of mainstream alternative TV programs such as Fright Nights, Origins Unknown, National Geographic's Paranormal, National Geographic's Wild X-Files, Ghost Cases Canada, The Richard and Judy Show, Revealing Secrets, Psychic Lifetime, Phenomenon Project, and many more. Steve Mera is the head tutor of the British Investigators Training Course in Anomalous Phenomena and UFOs, and the CEO of Phenomenon Magazine's world's largest free e-zine, distributed to 12 countries to over 1.8 million subscribers. He's also author of books, A to Z of the Unknown, Strange Happenings, Paranormal Insights, and the co-author of The Rothschild Poltergeist. And let's get to our guest. Are you guys still there with me?
Still here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me. It's bright and early your time.
Not so bright yet.
No, it's still dark. Yeah, it's early across the pond. Well, thank you so much tonight, guys. You guys have like two amazing guests, two long, amazing bios. I skipped over a little bit. I apologize. I want to get rolling the show, but I'll let you guys kind of take the floor, what you want to get across to our audience tonight. There's so much we could talk about, and I'll kind of let you have the floor here to tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you guys have been up to.
Wonderful. That's great.
Steve, do you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Barry. What we've been up to really is concluding probably one of the largest investigations that we've ever been able to carry out in regarding the so-called Nazca mummies, which came to light in last year, around about the June time, was brought to our attention over the internet by Gaia TV, releasing a number of videos of the strange humanoid with three long fingers and three long toes. And myself and Barry had been involved in this investigation right from the start, traveling to Peru and witnessing these bodies. Now, of course, I have to say, we initially thought there would obviously may be something a little bit hokey going on. There were some smaller bodies which were also apparently seen, around about 29 inches in length, and clearly didn't look quite right. But of course, the internet went mad over it. There was an international interest in this particular case.
Oh yeah. And
with us traveling there and doing a physical examination of all these bodies, the first ones obviously we were shown in actually size order. They came out in small boxes to begin with.
Oh wow.
A small 12-inch body, which when I was in the small room with Barry looking at these, and the first one was clearly a fake, had a fish's head, looked to be made of animal bones. X-rays and scans showed no ball joints in their arms and legs, no lungs, no nasal passages, no jaw. And we called it, as when we were there, we said, well, this is a fake. And they nodded between themselves, these guys. Now, what we're talking about is how these arrived in Cusco. Was that apparently a huacaro, a grave robber, as you would say, had delivered these to the Inkari Institute in Cusco, and basically said, look, we own these, and but they're unusual. We need to find out what they are, and you guys do the analysis, and of course left them in the Inkari Institute's hands. And the president himself was Thierry Hamin. And when we went down there, we were officially investigating on behalf of the Inkari Institute, because we thought Okay, they were having some real difficulties trying to find out what these bodies represented. There was huge media interest at the time. They were struggling to deal with all that. So, of course, we went in there to try and find out, what the bottom line was, and if these things were actually authentic or not. Immediately after being shown this small body, they moved on to some ones which were 29-inch in length, which, again, I have to admit, were very suspicious, because at the time, things such as names like alien, hybrid, reptilian, and things like that were floating around the internet. They were trying to be passed off as some type of living creature, which was kind of a hybrid reptilian. But from what we were looking at up close and personal in the scans and x-rays, we weren't overly impressed with these small ones. Again, does not seem to be ball joints in their arms and legs, and missing lungs, and no nasal passages, no jaw to move, and we thought, well, just don't constitute a biological creature. But, we're not the science guys at the end of the day. We're there to conduct the best we can in a physical examination with the scans, the photographs, the video, the x-rays, what we were presented at the time, and to try and make a judgment call on this. Though we weren't very impressed with these smaller bodies, as we moved on, we were presented 3 hands, which seemed to have metal discs on top of them. We were told those metal discs were in fact gold. We don't believe they were. But there were 3 hands with 3 fingers, very long, very large hands. To look to be 6 phalanges at the time on these fingers. So there were 3 phalanges longer than the average finger that you would find on a human, but only 3 of them. No thumb, no little finger. And again, a little bit suspicious. All these items were covered in this white powder at the time as well. Right. And there were a lot of people over the internet saying, well, it's plaster and it's this, that, and the other. And we just didn't know what that was at the time. But it was seemed to be across all the items that were being shown to us. And again, after showing us the hands, they came out with some small skulls, elongated skulls, around about 73 millimeters in diameter, and only small. And these were the same skulls that you would find on the 29-inch bodies. And yes, they clearly looked like skulls. They looked like it was made from bone, and looked like they had skin covering and this white powder on top. 2 eyes, a very tiny nose, slit for a mouth. And again, we just couldn't identify what we were really looking at. The x-rays really of the skulls didn't really give us too much, really. They looked to be some type of packing inside the skull, which was questionable. But we knew that this was ultimately going to have to fall in the hands of the science guys to confirm anything for sure. But things really started taking a twist then, because what came out was in fact a body. Was not. I mean, everything else just didn't really mean much once we saw this body. This is what we were there to see, and the main feature was this Mera body, right. An adult size, according to the rib count, female, and we were told she was around about 1800 years of age. And she had some anomalies. She did have an elongated skull, but again, that could have been simply down to boarding. Right. But she did have large orbital rims. The eye sockets were larger. Very small mouth, small nose. She had teeth, so we could tell from the X-ray she was an adult. Slightly longer canines. But that could just be derivative of what she was eating, and back then in 1,800 years ago. And she had, of course, 3 fingers and 3 toes, long 3 fingers and 3 toes. Again, 6 phalanges in the toes, in the fingers, and unusual looking, I have to say. And she was in fact a real body. Right, and covered in this white powder. And of course, this was all being videoed at the time by Barry, who was with me, and he was looking over the bodies very closely with ultraviolet light and taking photography. And we're a little bit dumbfounded. I mean, we really didn't know what Maria represented. Had she been? Is it a body that's been altered, or is it a real thing? Is it a real creature that had 3 toes and 3 fingers? Anatomically, I'd have to say, it wouldn't have been advantageous for this being to have those long fingers and long toes without having a thumb and a small finger. It would have been difficult to grasp anything.
That's what I thought about it.
Exactly.
Without a thumb? I mean, that's like biology 101 for a
It is.
sentient species. To do something, you need that thumb.
You do indeed. And of course, apart from that, the 3 long toes, there was very little foot, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
I was considering if this was a real creature walking around, she would have been falling all over the place, the poor thing. And having 3 long fingers and 3 long toes, I could only think of such creatures like a tree climber or a swimmer. But it wouldn't seem that she was an amphibian of any sort. There was no skin between the toes. And of course, not really in the ways of a tree climber. Of course, that location, allegedly where she was found, which was Nazca, from what we were being told, there isn't that many trees around.
Right.
And we know that the Nazca region, which is said where she was discovered inside some type of cave, there was this wonderful elaborate story that there was a tomb or a cave. When we tried to press myself and Barry for that information, where is this cave or tomb, we were getting the runaround. We were told numerous different stories, and they altered it throughout time, and it was very questionable as to if that was really truthful or not. But the story is that she was discovered in this location by vaqueros. There was a sarcophagus in there, and in that was the smaller 29-inch bodies. There were some artifacts around, and he actually claimed to have seen some real ones running away.
Living ones?
Small living ones, 29-inch tall, running away. Now, I have to admit, when we were there and we were dressed up with the normal attire on, like we were conducting an operation, to be honest with you, with face masks and hats and gloves and gowns and of course everything was done very properly. But when they told us that they claimed to have seen some of these things running away, I had a little bit of a giggle under my face mask, to be honest, because I imagine these poor things with no ball joints trying their best to run away would have been.
They waddle. They would have to waddle away.
Waddles, yeah, very fast waddles it would have been. But I thought, okay, I'll just listen to the stories and see what unfolds. And of course, we came away really from there with really not thinking so much on these small ones. We thought pretty much they might have been fake. We just had to prove it so.
Right.
But for the real body, that was unusual. But because we were told all these were found as a same discovery, it's not good. It's when you're eliminating some of these small ones, you start to think, well, obviously might be that something had been doctored professionally, maybe even by taxidermists. We don't know that the larger body might have been representing something which might have been a hoax, of course. So we went away from there really confused as to what that represented. It would have had to rely upon the science. And of course, coming back to the UK, we wanted to make sure that we used a proper science team. Now, Barry will explain a little bit the reasons why we operated with a number of professionals in Sri Lanka, as opposed from some of the other people that have been using doctors and providing their reports. So,
I got a really quick question though. It was a Akari Institute that had these bodies, on loan, I guess, right?
The Akari Institute did have them, yes.
Yeah, but they were a respected institute. I mean, like they're scientists. They should be able to look at those fake, at least those little ones, and go, So you think they were testing you when they did that, or?
Well, to be honest with you, the bottom line is I think the Akari Institute was in on it. To be honest with you, but when we went there, and I know it's a strong claim, but when we went there with open hands to help them, to assist them at no charge, our own expense. And what we found, what followed, was something which was quite disturbing. Slowly but surely, we started to find out more and more information, which really put them right in the middle of this. And we started to think, hang on a second, are we supporting the people here that might be responsible in some way in regard to its fates? And as time went on and new information was obtained, they suddenly started to show their colours. And then we realised very quickly that we're up against a whole community of people here which are involved. Not just from the Inkari Institute side, but also from within our own subject.
Yeah, that's what I wondered when you go, well, these are fake. You guys should know that, right? That's what I would have been saying to him. Sorry, I want Barry to continue. That's just what came to my mind when you're talking about it.
Well, the thing is, we should probably state here that the Inkari Institute are not doctors themselves, and they're very much explorers. That would head into the Peruvian jungle, looking for different discoveries as well. So their experience per se in regard spotting the fakes was questionable. Granted, and I got to say that when Steve and I left, and we came back to our relative countries, that there was 3 more that seemed to appear and come on the scene, which I must admit, when Steve and I saw the photograph of the 3 29-inch bodies that appeared after we left, we just called them Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and they seem to be very bad copies of the originals. I gotta say, there was a degrading aspect to the quality of what we initially had seen, and certainly the ones that were coming after it were not up to power as the others. But as Steve rightly pointed out, we needed to get the assistance of specialized scientists, people who were qualified within their field, and not for instance, like in Peru, a radiologist was making a comment on how these bones were like nothing else, and these bodies were like nothing else. We needed someone we needed people who were specialists within their fields to come forward and say, okay, guys, this is what we have, and can you tell us what they are? And that's why we ended up going to the specialists that we found, who were world renowned, and they started to do their work. But the samples that we had brought, that in itself was a task and a half. It was really rough going to get those samples, to get them tested and everything else. But of course, while all this was going on, we were competing against the governments who were trying to make sure that these things remained a fake, and we could understand why, because the amount of artifacts that are disappearing across Peruvian borders into the hands of private collectors is like nothing else. The amount of Peruvian heritage that is disappearing and completely being destroyed is really a heinous act in itself.
Yeah, no kidding.
But from our standpoint, being in Peru, we could see that the poverty is like nothing else. It is exceptionally bad. Once you leave Lima, it is quite easy to see the poverty within Peru, and we can sympathize with the people there and what they're having to do. However, there is a certain grouping of people who are making millions out of this, and that money is certainly not filtering down to the people on the ground who need it. We got to say as well that the people who are doing this, they have no qualm on taking the likes of myself and Steve out into the desert.
That's what
putting a bullet in the back of our head and burying us in the desert to be found 1,800 years later. That was something that Steve and I needed to be very careful about as well, because we were there were times that Steve and I were completely out of our safety net, and we needed to think on our feet and be very, very careful. But it was when we got back, we really started to knuckle down with our scientists, and also scientists from other non-speaking countries. We really started to work together, and that's whenever the truth started to slip out. And I got to say that good science is started with observation, and all we had to do was wait and observe, and sooner or later it was going to come out, and it finally did.
The thing is, with such a case like this, because it had international interest all over the world, newspapers, the internet, the reporters, the people that were initially involved, there was Jaime Maussan, Gaia TV, and in fact, Jaime was running an investigation right alongside us, to be honest with you. We interviewed him, we interviewed his doctors whilst we were in Lima, at a press announcement that he had called to put information out, which fell flat because no DNA was released. He did have two doctors which sung praise for these small creatures and saying that they believe that they may represent something living. And I thought, are we seeing, is it something different that we're looking at here? I mean, these are supposed to be doctors. And then we start to do some research. And this is why the reasons why we went independently with our own scientists, because, you know, you've got to be able to trust these guys.
Right. And
they've got to have a checkable background. They've got to cook, you know, we went with the Sri Lanka, the location, specifically because they're award-winning. They train CSI police officers, and they're very well known in the work they've done. They're very credible, and they've got checkable backgrounds and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we also had to protect the scientists. We didn't want to just throw names out because, you know, there were people out there that are absolute believers that these things, we don't need any evidence. They just readily believe that these things might represent alien and just go on the attack for anybody who might suggest and otherwise. So we have to make sure that the scientists were protected. But we started looking at the other people that put their reports forward and some of the doctors and their responses. And when it came to the crunch, when you start looking into the background of these doctors, some of them didn't seem to have a checkable history. It was some of these had questionable backgrounds in regards where they actually worked and how qualified they were to make a judgment call on these bodies. Two of the doctors had also, apparently, from the information that we have, had been involved in something known as the Roswell slide fiasco, which was something which was a bit unpretty, should we say, in the world of ufology. It wasn't something good. And when you see the similar remarks coming from these doctors in regards to the Roswell slides incident, then you know, we have to even question the authenticity of these doctors. There has been doctors that come forward and say, hey, you know, I will stake my reputation on it. But the problem is that some of these doctors don't have a reputation.
Exactly.
This is the biggest problem. They'll say anything.
They got nothing to lose. Right?
They've nothing to lose. So this is why that we ended up having to go independent, because we just couldn't trust anybody else's reports than our own. And of course, when that report came back through analysis because the biggest question that we put to them was what you're always harping on about the hands and the fingers. Why aren't any samples been taken? People are taking samples. Your doctors are taking samples from the body and confirming the body is this is old, but it's not telling us anything. We need samples from the fingers and from the toes. That's the big. And when you ask those questions, it was we know we've not had that done. Well, that's the first thing that you would expect to be done.
Right.
So when we went back a second time, or should we say when Barry went back, it was to make sure that their doctors were being instructed by our professors where to take those samples from and how to take those samples. And of course, there was a professional chain of custody, because at the end of the day, if you do not have a chain of custody, it's worthless.
Exactly.
You can't prove samples taken are the ones being analysed. So in a court of law, it would just never work. You've got to have a chain of custody. And to be honest, it was so sloppy, the work, that we don't even believe chain of custodies were carried out by other people. I've not seen any evidence of any chain of custody.
You don't know the location the bodies were found, right? They never revealed that, did they?
Never revealed it. I mean, I tell you what, the first thing that was revealed was Gaia TV had put out a video of Maria, the body, being examined on the top of a roof in the middle of the day in Costco, I believe, surrounded by people not in appropriate dress, prodding and turning her around in the elements, out in the environment. And to be honest, our guys, our professors and that, were just absolutely horrified at that. And yet to see two alleged doctors doing that and allowing themselves to be filmed to do that, I mean, that was just a big giveaway straight away there. There was nothing more unscientific than that procedure. And yet they were screaming it was a scientific investigation. So that was very questionable from the start and was damaging. It was certainly damaging. I mean, it's a shame that was done in that manner. However, we obtained samples and those were analysed by our guys. And we had to wait a long time for that analysis to come back because it takes a long time. It was expensive, which we'd had to pay ourselves. And people didn't realise, actually, how long this analysis takes. And people would say, well, you've gone quiet on it now. You've nothing to say. And, of course, we couldn't. Well, not until we get results at the end of the day. Finally, they turned up, Jason. And from what we found, we didn't bother taking any samples from the small ones. We already pretty much worked out that these things were a bit like roadkill. These things didn't represent anything that was ever real. So we just wanted to make sure, if we're paying for this analysis, and it is expensive, that we make sure that we do the samples on the things that are most important. And of course, there was a small one, which was known as Wawita, which was again like we said it was like a baby.
Right.
I think we believe that she was around about 4 years of age, according to the teeth, looking at the teeth. But she was degraded very, very much because these weren't being kept in a preservative way. They weren't preserved properly. They were just kept in plastic boxes in a cupboard. And you can't do that with bodies, as we know they degrade. Right. And there was so much degradation on the small one, even though we did take samples from Wawita, representing like a small baby with 3 fingers and 3 toes. We didn't get any hits back from her. She was just too far gone. However, we got 2 hits on Maria, and that's what was a major thing, because when we came back, knowing where we took the samples from fingers and toes and stuff, we came back with that analysis showing that there was an anomaly in Maria, and it looked to be a mutation. Now, this mutation, we were thinking, this is really interesting. Could this mutation represent the reasons why this body has 3 fingers and 3 toes? Now, looking at it, taking into consideration our scientists have taken samples from this body, and it's showing this mutation. They didn't have any idea what this mutation represented. They hadn't seen this mutation like this before. We got that information, and we took that, and we did a live presentation, exclusive, at Contact in the Desert this year. And we revealed to the world that, that Maria might represent a mutation here. And we've also told the world that the others are fake, absolutely fake, 100%. And we just couldn't conclude what that represented. However, things started to take a little bit of a different turn, which we realised now why we had that mutation. So Barry will fill you in a little bit more on that.
Well, the thing is that with work that was being carried out in non-English speaking countries, a lot of the research wasn't making it through to the mainstream within the English speaking countries. And so what we were doing was making contact with a Russian team of anthropologists. And we also learned of an anthropologist in Paris, France, who had been doing some in fact quite extensive work on the project as well, and also people in Peru, paleontologists and anthropologists in Peru were also working with this information. Now, the big thing that was put up to us at the beginning was that how can these how can these doctors make an assessment, or how can these scientists make an assessment on something which they have never seen? And granted, when the DNA test, we were being continually pushed for the DNA tests. You must do the DNA test. You have to do the DNA tests, and not much concentration was being focused on the actual bone structure itself. Well, the truth of the matter is that the nature of these particular bodies that really did lie within the bone structure, and that was the biggest thing we had to come and learn, is that when we discovered that the Russians, the French, even the Peruvians had already made a call on this, we started analyzing what those particular calls were. And we had to go through a lot of translations and everything else. We went through meetings with the Russian teams, and we were actually knee deep within communications with the guys at ground level within Peru. And we shouldn't actually snub the guys in Peru, because they have done fantastic work. And they have put their lives at risk as well, doing this, going up against these people who are making millions, these black market guys, to expose what was actually going on within the Peruvian culture, and what has been happening to the Peruvian culture at the hands of these callous people. And that's really what we started discovering, was that the bone structure itself, it actually had the aspect of the nature of these mummies, and when we started piecing that together and talking to in particular the Russians, that really started driving home what was actually going on.
It is a rather, it's, as we moved further on into the investigation and things unfolded, it became more horrific, to be honest with you. And I'll be completely honest and say, there's been a couple of times it's literally reduced me to tears, this case. It really has. It's been a very challenging case, especially when you realise that the reports that we're getting back is showing that they're using infant bones and adult bones added in to the manufacture of these things.
Oh my God.
Which would mean that they are illegally digging up corpses, collecting body parts and manufacturing these in some type of workshop and trying to pass them off. And the reasons why is because there's millions of dollars involved. There's a black market.
Well, how much did they want for Maria? Like what? A few million?
$1 million. $1 million was on Maria's head.
Wow.
$100,000 on the small ones. And there is a black market. And of course, we didn't realize that we were heading into territory which was a little bit worrying, because it's operated by the Peruvian mafia of all people. And it was getting a little bit nasty. We didn't realize how deep that rabbit hole went, and I believe me, it goes very, very deep. And we realized what was actually happening because of the reports back from these professors and doctors in anthropology. I mean, you don't get a chemist or a biologist to come up and say these things are real. You need the people who are trained in bones, and of course, they're made from animal bones. We had a great call from Mark Ollie, who was one of our team guys. He was an archaeologist. He's very well respected in the UK, and he called it straight away. He said, "This looks to be like a small mammal skulls, and they're filed down the cranial ridge. They're utilising animal parts." And in fact, yes, they were. According to the anthropologist, there was animal bones, there was bird bones, dog bones, llama bones, infant human bones. Wow. And the reasons why we're getting mutations back from Maria's likelihood is because in one sample we had probably 2 human different bones in one sample.
Right.
Now, when that happens, that's just going to come back as a very strange mutation. And then we realized, well, okay, this is what's happening. Extra human bones have been added into those fingers and toes, and it's trying to be passed off as something unusual. Now, we've seen these sort of things before. People have messed about with bodies, and all sorts of wonderful stories that come out over the internet about strange bodies that have been found. And sometimes, they're mostly manufactured. But this had been a professional job, and we didn't realize there was an industry behind it, and a lot of people. And of course, when we started to put all this together, It was shocking. It was absolutely shocking what was going on, because when there's money on the table, there are people out there which are going to basically collect body parts, dig them up and collect body parts. And we know where they're taking these things from. We've got satellite photographs of areas where they're digging up these on a regular basis. We've talked with the Ministry of Culture, because at the end of the day, we were in support of the Peruvian government getting their hands on these, and preserving these and just trying to stop this racket from happening. But do you know what? It's almost impossible, because it's going to continue while there's money on the table. And while there's big production companies out there which are willing to throw money at this and say, hey, here's $1,000 if we can be filmed with you, they're going to go out there and do it. Because the guys at the bottom of the chain, which are going out and collecting these parts, are doing it at like $30, $50 because they've no money. They need food, and I understand the reasons why people go to such lengths to do things. But at the top of the chain, there's millions of dollars at stake, and some of these have already been sold overseas. So, of course, this black market racket which was going on, we were immersed right into the middle of it. But what's good for us is that we've communicated with people overseas in Peru, and there's been some fantastic work. It's been going on in the background. And we paired up with Eduardo Pogoralski. He runs a very good Facebook page, ET International Disclosure. He's done some fantastic work. He's been screaming out for a long time. But there is this language barrier. And, of course, the Western world weren't picking up on this. It's a shame. It's a real shame. Other people, Como Loreto, was doing exactly the same thing from Peru. Luca McLovin, brilliant guy. He actually filmed one of the guys that goes out there and collects these things for the mafia. He actually filmed one of these guys, and they were saying what they did, how they did it. Oh, wow. And it's a real big industry. And now the downside of this is that these things are still going to go on to be promoted as real. There are probably going to be conferences where people are going to be charging £30, £40 a head to come to the conference to find out about these alien hybrids. And the whole thing is all fake. And it's being promoted not just by the Inkari Institute, but some of the people that have been involved in this case as well. And that's a real shame. That's what we want to put to an end of. I mean, for myself and Barry, we already did one documentary and put that out over YouTube free of charge, which is The Mysterious Bodies of Peru. And it was very raw. It was us on site as it happened, and we filmed every step of the way just to let people know what we were up against. And we've had to do a second documentary just to put this to bed, because myself and Barry are itching to get onto other projects, to be honest with you. And we've spent a year, 18 months on this case, and and there's no more really we can do.
No, once it's fake, you guys should be done. You've spent enough time, money, energy, risking your lives, in my opinion, going down there. I want to say this because we do have to get cut into our last commercial break. But a year ago or more, when this first came out, I do my World Wide Web of Weird news segment. And I, of course, had to cover this. It was starting to get out there. And, I'm not trying to cause any drama or talk to anybody, but when I pointed out, because I've had a number of Hami Musan stories in my World Wide Weird, as again, we got another thing that Hami Musan's promoting that I just don't believe after the Roswell slides, after the, you remember the ferry? Remember the ferry? Did you guys see that one?
Yes, we did. We saw the ferry, we saw the Roswell slides, and we also saw the skinless monkey.
Yeah. Well. I mean, it's just after so many times, I mean, to me, he's like one of the biggest signals that something's fake. Is if Hami Musan's out there talking about it, you might want to not believe it. I'm just saying, maybe he's a really nice guy. Maybe he is. But
we
so
have
many
to
times.
remain professional. We've got to remain professional from our point. Sometimes I'm lecturing alongside these people, and they go about doing their own thing and the way they do it. I always try and respect everybody for who they are. But at the end of the day, when myself and Barry get involved in a case, we say it as is. There's no stone unturned, and what we deliver is the absolute truth, be it positive or not. There's a lot of people that come forward and say, "Well, you're wasting your time because I'm going to tell you that fake." Well, yeah, we understand that,
but you got to prove it.
At the end of the day, the investigation process, you have to prove the negative as well. That's the way we have to do it, and we have done so, which is good.
Well, I'm honored that you guys are on my show talking about this. You know, people are like, well, it's fake. Why are we talking about it still? Because people need to understand the mechanisms of how these things happen and go viral and get promoted. I mean, I down in South America, some of the people that got ratted out here for being fraudsters are still selling that shenanigans down in South America and Mexico. Because of the communication barrier, just like the communication barrier, people probably down in Peru are saying, oh, they're fake, but it's the communication barrier.
There is a massive communication barrier, and from France, from Russia, from Peru, it wasn't getting out to the Western world, but we had to tap those sources, and we had to literally break through those barriers of communication to find out that there are official reports by proper qualified people, which have been involved in this case. In fact, Korotov, who Gaia has been using as a doctor, who seems to be the main guy speaking about the authenticness of these bodies. Again, unusual background. He seems to be more involved in spiritual and Kirlian photography. Claims he photographed the soul leaving the body, and of course, he writes a letter to the anthropologists in Russia, asking, I'm no anthropologist. I'm not an expert. I need your help. The downside is what he got back he didn't like. What he got back was in a report saying they're all fake, and of course, communication quickly ended. Of course, that's not come to light, and those things really do need to come to light.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's another aspect here as well, and a lot of wordplay that was going on when this was being reported. And when you put letters in front of someone's name like doctor, that's it. And we assume, oh, well, then they know what they're talking about. We need to further ask the questions, doctor of what exactly?
Remember, there was ads where doctors used to tell it was healthy to smoke. So
yeah,
so much for that. Well, let's get ahead. I want to get rolling into our commercial break. People watching on Facebook, we do play music out the late night in the Midlands. You cannot hear. Do not freak out because when we get quiet. But when we come back, we're gonna have Steve Mera, Barry Fitzgerald. We're gonna talk about what they are moving on to in the future because these guys are incredible investigators. I can't wait to talk more about it that tonight. And you can call into the show after the commercial break. I'll get those phone lines out to you in just a few minutes. All right, guys, we'll be right back with you. Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guests are Steve Mera and Barry Fitzgerald. We were talking about the Peruvian mummies, the fakes, the hoax, but I want to get in tonight with them a little bit about what they got coming in the future. I want to talk to Steve about On Stellar. It's something that's really interesting in paranormal social media platform. I'd like to talk to him about that a little bit. But you can call into the show if you got questions for our guests tonight. There's a few ways you can call in. You can call in by video Skype line ID, Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat. That's Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat. You can also call in audio only. Skype line is OOJBland 00. That's OOJBLAND00. That's the Skype ID. And you can call in the old fashioned way by phone by 219-230-4444. That's 219-230-4444. Let's get back to our guest. Steve and Barry, you still there with me?
Still here.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know what you guys, what direction you want to go into, but I did kind of want to ask you a little bit. Reminder, audience, the phone lines are open. You can call in. But I have my question about, I joined On Stellar. I see you are a co-founder, Steve, I see, of On Stellar.
Well, On Stellar's gone over to Scott Leslie, who is one of the directors that came on board with us. And we've left it in these capable hands now, and On Stellar's doing very well. Which is stage 2 is on its way, which I think we've been told it's going to be September on stage 2, so we're going to be seeing some big changes by then. But it seems to be doing very well and gaining momentum on a regular basis.
I think it's an awesome idea. I loved it from the first moment I heard it. Having a social media for people that are into the weird, the strange, the unusual, love the wonder, the paranormal, and all the different things. It's great. I love that idea. I thought that was awesome.
It's great to have it's great to have one location where that all happens, and on Stella is the place, because we don't have to go through thousands of photographs of kittens and dogs, and but we get straight to the point. And
Right.
what's good is that there are certain forums which are just dedicated to certain subjects, and it means that you can hunt out that information a lot quicker. I mean, we're not going to take anything away from Facebook. Facebook certainly still does its thing, but you have to search around, and you have to find, and people do miss out on a lot of things. So it gives people the opportunity of getting right to the source material, being on Stella. And what's good is it also is great for the community. The network reach is international. It doesn't limit you to just 5,000 friends. It's and it's great for pushing out information such as if you've got books and events and things like that. So it's a really big growing community in regards to people who want to push out that information, or just communicate, or find out things specifically about the subject.
I'm hoping eventually, I don't know what's going to happen with stage 2 of it, but I hope they eventually be able to do stuff like I'm able to do on Facebook, like live stream there. That's what I'm hoping.
It will be on its way. I'm sure they're going to be going. I don't want to give too much away, but
no,
there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things moving in the background for them, and it's only going to get bigger, and it's only going to get better for the community.
That's awesome. I think that's so cool. Even though you've kind of handed it off, that you even started that or had involved. Much kudos to you for that, because I think that it was such an awesome idea.
Oh, thanks very much.
So
I'm pleased that it's done so well.
What else holds for the future for Steve and Barry?
Well, there was one thing that was mentioned during this investigation that we've just done regarding these Nazca mummies, and that was that this location, which we don't believe existed anyway, this tomb or cave, was in fact in the heart of a magnetic anomaly. Now, that was probably the worst thing for these guys to say, because as far as I'm concerned, the world's leading researcher on magnetic anomalies is in fact Barry. He's travelled the world. He's very acute when it comes to the researching regarding magnetic anomalies, and of course, we've done some extensive research whilst we've been away in different locations at these areas. In fact, whilst we were contacting the desert, we headed up. And this is the ironic thing is there must have been 5,000 to 10,000 people in contact in the desert. They're all talking about UFOs whilst we're up there actually watching one. 7 miles away down Canyon Road in Palm Springs. We went to looked at our maps, and we found a magnetic anomaly. And we went there, and 32 minutes in, we saw something which we cannot explain. Wow. And it just proves again that from some of the research that we've done that there's a definite connection there. So, of course, what we wanted to mention is just enlighten people a little bit more about these magnetic anomalies and about what equipment is going to be really needed to advance this subject. Because, after all, it's the 21st century now, and ufology needs to, be advanced somewhat, and we're finding ways to be able to do that. I'm sure Barry will explain a little bit more about that.
The idea of these particular magnetic anomalies and being able to see these magnetic anomalies was very important. Now, we do have satellites in space at the moment that can point out these anomalies. We've got access to those, and that's great. It allows us to see the majority of the magnetic anomalies over the entire planet. But what do these mean for the researcher? Well, what we tend to find is that when we have got tightly packed, positively charged magnetic anomalies, we tend to find other phenomenon within the region of these anomalies, which include UFOs being reported, poltergeist phenomena, cryptids, but you'll also find an alarming rate of disappearances, of mutilations, and all of these factors all surround these particular positively charged magnetic anomalies, and I got to say, predominantly so. That in itself caused us great interest, and I've been looking into this and following this particular research. I'm wondering how on earth can we utilize this for the entire community as a whole, not only ufology, but the paranormal and cryptids and everything else. And looking into that, the wonderful work that's already been carried out by David Pauldys in the Missing 411 series. He's done tremendous work, and that in itself also suggests a connection to these magnetic anomalies, these particular doorways. And you know, I've done
I like
a lot
that,
of work.
doorways.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with the ancient Irish and looking across at other cultures across the world, and seeing this connection with these magnetic anomalies at some level. And so we wanted to go back then and look historically at locations, for instance, that have been known for being active within the ufology field. Places like Skinwalker Ranch.
I knew that's the first thing I thought of when you talk about magnetic anomalies was Skinwalker Ranch. It's one of the first places I thought came to my mind.
Well, initially, a lot of the research was suggesting there was no magnetic anomaly, but or possibly a localized magnetic anomaly, possibly. But that's not the case. From our mapping system, we can see this is much more than just the Skinwalker Ranch, because the magnetic anomaly there extends northwest over the top of the range.
Wow.
And is very extensive. So it's not just the farm itself, but we also find Brown Mountain Lights in North Carolina, another hotspot, Hisdalen, another hotspot, places in Russia, all these historical places right across the planet tend to have connections with these positive magnetic anomalies, and even the late John A. Mack, he was doing some research there and into abductions, and he found that there was some of the abductions which he had listed were actually being led into these magnetic anomalies before the abduction actually happened.
Like moving from one location to another.
Yes,
closer to the anomaly. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, they would drive their car into these areas for the abduction to happen, which was very bizarre in itself. One of the most famous cases of abduction within Scotland was back in the 1990s, on the A70, which takes them through the middle of only two magnetic anomalies in Scotland, and this was a very famous one of the two guys that were abducted, ironically, by 29-inch beings with three fingers. And so that in itself was very intriguing to us. So we wanted to take that and utilize that. And what we're developing now is the Discovery Mapping System. And the mapping system itself utilizes our cell phones to their full potential. And not just something for looking at Facebook and taking a picture every now and again. The moment that you start moving into one of these magnetic anomalies, your cell phone will activate, and will start pulling data from all across the internet. And if you should happen to be in one of these magnetic anomalies, and you see something, you can take your phone out and you can start filming, or you can start taking photographs. These will be uploaded to the servers and held for 48 hours. And you can choose to share with the community, or you can choose to take them down and keep them out of the way. But for anyone else who is using the same app within that magnetic anomaly, you can send out an alert in which they can turn their position and start to triangulate these particular occurrences, and also start pulling the information together, vital information which we needed right across the board.
That is amazing. This is one of my favorite subjects, Barry, is the magnetic anomalies, but to me, the missing people, the doorways to another world, or walk-ins, cryptids. I named my show Paranormal Soup because I believe all these things are connected.
Oh, they absolutely are, and that's something that we have seen throughout across the board. I had Steve here in Ireland last year, and Steve had often heard me talking about the ancient legends and things like that, and so, but he never really took much credence to it. It was a case of they're there, but we don't consider them. But bringing them across and taking them to these locations that are exceptionally rich with phenomena. Steve was immersed into something which really brought the myths and legends back up into the fold, and into something that we really do need to consider when we're investigating. And those old manuscripts really should be scrutinized, because
Really?
there are historical locations with lots of activity, which has been happening for centuries and centuries.
I do have a person on the phone line. He's been on hold for a while. Is it all right if we take a phone call?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Zach is one of my regular callers, and he always has amazing questions. Thank you for staying on hold, Zach.
It's not a problem at all, brother. How you doing?
Doing great.
Hi, Zach. How are you?
Doing good, sir. Doing pretty good. I just have two questions. One for both of you guys, and then my second one is for Barry. So I've been hearing a lot about the Peruvian mummy and story, and I mean, it's intriguing to me, at least. I mean, because I hate to use the word conspiracy, but I mean, it's basically it's more than just, like you said, debunking if this piece of evidence is fake or not. But my question to both of you is, do you believe that there were rogue factions of the Peruvian government that were involved in the Peruvian mummy incidents? Why or why not?
Zach,
I'll let you answer that, Barry. That's
our research has indicated that there are suggestions that there are certain parties within government who are on the tech from the Huaqueros. So it's in their interests to let a lot of the grave robbing continue.
It is.
And
it's a difficult situation, because we were dealing with people within the Peruvian government which were supporting us, that want these discoveries to be retrieved and preserved and put an end to this. But the person sat next to that guy might be the one that's actually supporting it and is in touch with the investors. So this is a real problem. And when we say that rabbit hole goes very deep, it really does. And this is when we realise that it isn't going to be a case that we are going to be able to, put a stop to this. It's going to continue until the economy changes in the country, until people stop putting money on the table. These terrible acts are going to continue.
I think it's something we need to realize, that there's always corruption in government. There's even in Europe, there's enough corruption to run a small country every year.
And there's enough corruption in America and enough missing money to run like several small countries.
I know. Imagine how much money they got on those black budgets. Anyway, so my second question is to Barry. Barry, I've been following you since I first saw you over on Ghost Hunters. So my question to you is, how did you first get started with taps?
It was, oh my goodness, it was years back. That the taps guys were coming across to Ireland to do a case. It was the Lep Castle case. You may remember it.
I do.
I do.
And they were coming across, and one of the guys dropped out at the very last minute, and all I was just simply a fixer. I went along and I arranged the castle and made sure everything was okay and all the rest. And when they landed, they said, "We're a man down. Would you mind going in front of the camera?" And I thought, well, okay, yeah, that's fine. And that was it. That's how I became involved with taps. And then I got a call several months later. We're going to do an international show. Would you be interested? Well, I thought about it for about 10 seconds and said, hell yeah. And that was it. Off I went. But that's how I got connected with taps.
That's really cool, man. Well, guys, that's all the questions I had. Thank you so much for answering them.
Thank you,
I'm
Zach.
loving hearing everything that you guys are saying. It was such an honor meeting you guys. Jason, thank you for allowing me to call in, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for calling in, Zach. You have a great night.
Thank you, Zach. That's great. Well, myself and Barry are over in we're over in the US quite a lot, so just follow us on our Facebook pages. We'll let people know when we're over in the States, so people can get to come up and meet us and stuff. That'd be good.
I would love to meet you guys. I would love to meet you guys. And I was a big fan of Ghost Hunters. I try to keep my fandom down for the night. I have to admit, I know the exact episode, the first one you appeared on, Barry, because I remember it was Steve. He couldn't fly. It was like the Mr.
Yep.
T episode. They thought about drugging him. He wouldn't fly, and the poor guy couldn't go over there. I felt so bad for him. But then we got you. We got to see you.
That's it.
One of the things too Barry, that I have to ask before the night runs out is I saw one of the titles your books had to do with banshees, and you talk about folklore and stuff. And I have very much big time Irish heritage in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a small boy, 4 or 5 years old, me and my cousin, we saw this green floating head fly through the room. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of the Wicked Witch of the West, but what I always wondered if it was a banshee's because I could hear her wailing. Like that's where it started before I saw this head pop through the room. And my cousin, years later, when we compared, I brought it up to him, and he went completely white. He thought it was a dream. But his memory, he's like, I don't remember any crying or wailing. I'm like, that's the thing that stuck with me the most. Well, he's on the other side of my family. He has no Irish background. So that's one of the reasons I've always wondered what your experiences with banshees. I have to ask, I couldn't help. I had to ask.
Well, I've tracked the Banshee 3 times now, and each time I've heard her scream, and I can tell you what, it is a horrific thing to experience. It is like nothing else. People will say to me, oh, it's just a fox. It's a hare caught in a trap or something like that, or some lady down the street having a bit of a laugh and screaming her head off. No, it is nothing like that. This scream is unique, and is something that you will never forget. It almost for people who have heard the Banshee, it's impossible to try and describe it. But it's a scream that you will never forget.
Thank you. If that's what I experienced, that's what I've always said. I can't describe that. And it's what stuck with me when my cousin said he didn't remember hearing anything. I'm like, well, that would be the one thing I would think you not forget besides the fact it was a green floating head.
Yeah.
Was that's how it started. I remember hearing it like faintly, and then it just got really loud, and she popped through the wall and flew around the room. And we like hid under covers, and then we ran for the door. It was, So I've always wondered that.
I gotta say that what you're describing though sounds more like an aspect of a haunting more so than the Banshee, because the Banshee never necessarily came into a property.
Really?
She was always outside, and when she cries, it's to bring awareness that there is a death coming, to be prepared. Now the person that's passing over will never hear. There is a sense of decency with her, in that in the ones that are passing, they will never hear her scream, and that in itself brings some it brings an ease to the passing, without disturbing the person, but it does bring into aspects of it's ironic that the Banshee herself is also connected with ufology. And the old doorways, because you got to go back. You got to go back and start stripping back the name to understand that ban means woman of, and she, of course, means she is a modern adaptation of the fairy, but the she itself was the ancient doorways, the old passage chambers of the Neolithic Irish. So this was a thing that was being recognized from the ancient times, that these were places, these were doorways to other places, and there were beings that were using these doorways. Banshee is woman of the she, woman of the mound, and the she are the people of the mound. These particular doorways that led to the other places, and it's interesting that there was an Australian university just last year have been doing some work on the DNA of Europeans, and what they were doing was mapping out the influence of tribal communities across Europe, to see all the different influences over the hundreds and thousands of years of where they were coming from. Interestingly, though, the people who were building these ancient passage chambers before the Great Pyramids of Giza, suddenly disappeared. They're not in our DNA. There's a space of 1,000 years that they can't account for. They just don't know where. There's an emptiness, and it seems around 2600 BC something bizarre happened on this island that we still can't explain, because that DNA should be in our DNA, and it's vacant. Something happened, and there's a big mystery around that as well.
That's so weird that, a whole, pretty much that having that gap, you mean it's like they just, as a race, disappeared?
Yeah, something bizarre happened, and that's where the science is leading us. The big mystery is what happened. Why was there a huge turnover of population in Europe, predominantly Northern Europe? What happened? So that's something that the mysteries are unfolding as we continue. And what I end up finding is that there are more questions than answers that come forward from time to time.
Well, I always found like the Druids and when the Romans started coming more into Europe and Britain area and finding the Druids, what was left, it seemed like they were a culture left behind by something. I don't know. That's how I've always felt about the Druids. Yeah,
the Druids themselves were certainly heavily influenced from the Celtic aspect of Europe, and they arrived on our shores around 500 BC. But the Romans never really got here. They set up a fort in Dublin, but that was about it. And probably because there was a huge fashion faux pas, in that the Romans wore socks with sandals, and we wouldn't put up with that. So
I must be a Roman, because that's where I wear socks with sandals all the time.
So yeah, that was frowned upon. So they necessarily never settled here. But the Irish are a very unique race themselves.
They're absolutely fascinating. I mean, from my research, I've been involved in the subject for 34 years. I took legends, myths, tales, and folklore pretty lightly until I started working with Barry. And as he rightly said, when he took me to Ireland, and he took me to one of these locations where one of these doorways are, and we were running up this side of this hill, this quite tall hill, and he said, we've got to be there at a certain time. And I'm trying to figure out why we've got to be there at a certain time. And of course, I just kept plodding on. And eventually we got up there, and we descended into this area where underground, like a chamber. And it was just at the time of the setting sun, I believe. And Barry wanted us to be there right at that time. And to be honest with you, I exactly know reasons why, because we had voices bellowing out from this location. There's nobody there, and I couldn't understand even any words, but there was definitely a female's voice bellowing out from nowhere. Wow. And that for me certainly changed my views and aspects regarding these legends and myths and tales. There's definitely something solid there for research and analysis. And of course, this is the reasons why Barry's been working on the idea of trying to find something which will advance this subject, because it's reasonably static in regarding the many items that we have to help the tools that we have for the trade, should we say, are we are limited. We really are, and we need to find new ways of how to research this phenomenon in general, because it's connected to the UFOs and ufology in its sense as well. Another person who's been doing some great work is Chris O'Brien. He's been working. He's another researcher. I think is he in Colorado? Is it, Barry?
He is. Yes. Up there in the mountains.
He's up in the mountains, and he's been doing the same type of research on these areas, doorways, portals, call them what you will. And we're going to be pairing up and doing some work together in the near future. But Barry did have a good discussion with Chris about the discovery mapping system, which he's very excited about. Just explain a little bit more how that actually works, Barry.
Yeah.
Well, the mapping system itself, once you enter these anomalies, it will start collecting all the data that it requires from across the internet, and also what's going on around you. Because if anything, like David Pollidy's work, we need to be sure that when we're going into an area, we're going to come back out again, or at least we're going to be found if we do disappear.
That has to be a concern if you're going to these areas.
Yeah. So that was a chief concern of mine, of course, going into this, and understanding that we could trace someone back and help those search and rescue reach you quicker than any time before. Now, that particular mapping system, the Discovery mapping system, the amount of data that we were going to be collecting and sharing with the community was massive. And we were having problems trying to shrink that data because it was so huge that we actually teamed up with a couple of engineers and friends of ours to rewrite a compression software that would be up to the job. And because of the Discovery mapping system, we're looking forward now at releasing the Delta Lambda compression software, which totally revolutionizes the idea of compression within the computing world and as the way we live our lives today. A lot of us are afraid to take photographs now because our cell phones are chock-a-block with various different bits and pieces and of data and photographs and videos and everything else, and music and movies, that there are moments that we're missing. We don't have to do that anymore. Not with Delta Lambda. Delta Lambda is superior to anything else out there. If you consider that a 32 gigabyte hard drive on your phone, for instance, that you can buy off the shelf, we're now taking that and we're transferring that into 32 terabyte of storage space. There is nothing out there that can touch this.
I'm sold. Oh yeah, doing this show, man. I run out of memory on I do everything on my phone, show prep and everything, man. And last time I got a new phone, my wife's like, "Why did you get a 128 gigabyte phone?" I'm like, "I do everything on my phone. I need the memory." And I got Dropbox and iCloud. I pay extra for. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, we take that data now and we shrink it 1,000 times, and it's fully accessible while it's in its compressed state. And the idea now that you can send a movie via a text on your phone, a full movie, you can text it to your friend.
Wow.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, if you across the platforms such as a laptop, PC, iPad, this is basically. I mean, a lot of people have 1 terabyte now in a laptop. That's going to produce.
That's mind blowing right there.
It is.
Jamie would say something about that.
It's going to be 1 petabyte on a laptop, which means 1,000 terabytes with a simple piece of software. That's going to be, for instance, if it's 50 gigabyte Blu-ray movies, I think that's going to hold about 20,000 of them. I don't think you'll get through all them in your life.
Right.
High fidelity music, guys. That's 158 years of play of high fidelity music. You know, it's and you know what's going to be good about this is that it's going to be introduced straight into the Discovery mapping system, which now means that all that data from everybody using those apps, which people can tap into and basically use it for research, all that data can easily be handled, which means that we really can advance the subject.
And I got to say that the Discovery mapping system there is no personal data involved in this. This is simply data that's we're collecting data of the vicinity of where you are. That's what we're interested in. We're not interested in what you did last week at your grandmother's or anything like that. That's nothing to us. We're not interested in that. And you select what you want to share. This is the big thing. And also with the likes of Delta Lambda, we're also looking at, we've got these huge data centers that are being built right across the countries. There's a huge one being built now in Ireland at the moment, and it's massive. Now, the thing is with the compression software, we're now giving the individual back their right to hold their own information securely, and they're responsible for that. They're not giving that over to a data center which can be hacked, which the information can be lost and everything else. This is no longer up to those independent data centers. Now we're saying, folks, now we can take control of our own data, and we can keep what's private. And that is a huge thing for today's society at the moment. And that for us is very important. Never mind the fact that these huge data centers use 2% of the world's power at present. They're producing enough CO2, the same CO2 as the entire airline industry.
I never thought about it, but yeah, if you think about how much energy and I mean just the cooling systems for these data centers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So we're taking that back. Yeah, the likes of someone online, for God's sake, who is paying or has got storage of 5 petabyte. The likes of YouTube or someone like that, 5 petabyte. I never even heard that word until we got involved with Delta Lambda, and now we're taking that 5 petabyte and we're shrinking it to 5 gigabyte. It's absolutely staggering what we're doing. Wow. It really, it's something that's coming along, and that in itself is coming from this field. We are making a change. We're on the brink of changing not only life on the planet, but space exploration. We're on the verge of changing, and it's come from this community.
Well, if you it's worth a lot of money, I'd say, to be able to do that.
It is, Jason. Yeah, but what we want to make sure when we started formulating this and working with the guys is that we didn't want to have a monopoly. We wanted to make sure. How many times have we heard about the military-industrial complex getting all the stuff and filtering it down to us 50, 70, 100 years later? Right. That's no good. For the first time, we want the people on the street to have exactly the same as everybody else. And so we've made a pledge to make sure that everybody gets it as cheap as possible for $10. It comes out on Christmas Day. They can get it from the Indiegogo campaign, and basically give it the world, because it's out there.
$10 one-time cost.
There's no monopoly. There's no monopoly when it's in people's
$10 one-time cost.
It's a one-time cost, and that in itself, at the moment, if people want to go on to dlcs.tech, they can buy 10 licenses, which will be released at Christmas for $10.
Wow,
that's a buck a license, and that will you can use one license, and you can give away the other 9 licenses if you want to your friends and family. But the amount of data storage that you're going to be able to have at this particular point is like nothing else. There is nothing out there that can touch this. And a lot of people have been saying, well, there's no proof of this. Well, there is proof coming because we're in the stages of preparing a video which will show a live demonstration of the software. The software is real, folks, and it is coming.
Wow. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We've had you can well imagine, we've had some calls with certain parties in high places already about this. They're already interested and buzzing around this. And people say, well, how come you've not gone into the Hutter Prize, which is about data compression? Yeah. You can win $50,000. Well, that's pretty much small fry, really. But we'll get to Hutter, and we will get to Hutter at some point.
If it does what it does, the $50,000 is a drop in the bucket. I'm just saying, you guys, if you're part of this, that's going to be huge. I have to ask the Delta Lambda. I just think of the. I don't know. Is any relation to that? Because that's what I think when every time you say Delta Lambda, I think of Delta Lambda from Nerds.
It really is, but what we need is we need some tools out there in the field, which is going to help us advance. What we realise is that this isn't new. This isn't something new. This is something that's been going on for a long, long time regarding these magnetic anomalies. In fact, Philip Corso, the Colonel Philip Corso, has passed away now. He was involved with the Roswell crash, and in 1982 he stated the US government were looking into 7 significant magnetic anomalies because they knew that there was a UFO connection with them. They're keeping this reasonably quiet. I believe the ruse is to convince people to look up to space and consider these things are traveling the huge distances of space to travel to Earth. And, when I lecture alongside some of the biggest people in the world in the subjects of UFOs, and I asked them the simple question, can you provide me just one piece of evidence to suggest that these things are traveling to us from deep space? There isn't one. And when you talk to the leading astronomers, are all involved in SETI, 40 years they've been pointing up there. What they say is space is incredibly quiet. And when we ask the questions, why is that? And they say, well, we just don't know. We should have lots and lots of things. The fact of the matter is, the likelihood is that we're dealing with, because 34 years ago when I was trained in ufology, my mentor said it was an extraterrestrial object. It was traveling from deep space, from another planet, they're ETs. But as time's gone on, we're dealing with a metaphysical, interdimensional terrestrial phenomena, which is right under our noses, guys, and it's been there forever. It is not the principles of our physics that these things are traveling from deep space. That's our thoughts. It's our way of thinking. We have to throw away the physics that we know. And in the 1970s, when the CIA turned around and made references on their documentation after looking into the UFO phenomena, they made references to things like WFM. And it was only years later, we didn't know what that meant. We thought it was some type of secret facility or some type of establishment, whatever it was. It was took a whistleblower some years later to say, oh, no, guys, that just means weird, freaky magic. Because we haven't got a clue how the physics works on this. This is what we're dealing with, the phenomena, which is so unusual. It's supernatural, it's spiritual. It's indistinguishable from magic. It simply is. This is exactly what Arthur C. Clarke said.
Yeah, I was just going to say Arthur C. Clarke's book.
Exactly it is. And this is why we need new ways of realizing how to manage, how to research and investigate this phenomenon, which is right under our noses.
The thing is, I've always said one of my biggest interests is the idea of multiple universes, parallel universes. And I've always said, when you talk about all the different alien species, you got, I'm saying there's 72 alien species and all this stuff. I'm like, for how big the universe is, I doubt 72 alien species are all going to find this one little planet out in the out in the outer limits of our galaxy. To me, it seems more likely that they are coming from parallel universes. If that is a true theory and is real, and if it's able to, their entities are able to transverse that and manipulate time too. Who's to say these aren't different versions of Earthlings?
Exactly. I mean, I think there is some form of deception that goes on. I mean, Barry will certainly back me up on this. If you actually go through referencing and do research, you'll find that there's been over 800 different types of beings which have allegedly been seen, 30 different types of greys which have been seen, all coming out with the same line that they're coming from some distant planet. There's over 800 different names for different places where they're supposed to be coming from. Are we just being fed a line? Is there just an agenda? People say there's bad experiences and there's good experiences. Well, one thing that we've realized very quickly is, myself and Barry, is that this phenomenon is not all love and light. There are a lot of nasty things that goes on in this phenomenon, But then, how are people interpreting what is a good experience? When you ask people, they say, "Well, because it wasn't bad." Well, I say, "Well, hang on a second. Couldn't it just be agenda? If I give 6 officers, a task to do, they're going to go in there and do what they do. They don't think about interpretation of emotion and if it's good or it's bad. They're just doing a job." And that's what seems to be the situation. But there has been alarming incidents. The Colaris incident, there's been lives lost in India regarding UFOs, the same thing. These things are quickly swept under the rug. They're not talked about very often. The press don't get hold of them. And they try and make sure that those types of information doesn't get out there. But what they do promote is the love and light. Is that, these are beings that are all here to save us and save humanity and save the earth. But the bottom line is, they've been doing this since ancient times, if that's the case, because our ancestors knew about these. They knew about the ancient doorways. They knew that frequencies and resonance was probably the key to opening and shutting these things. And of course, they tried to leave us information. And of course, that information is left behind. It's messages in stone. They've left all those clues behind for us. However, there is still that ruse there. The secret space program, the breakaway civilization, looking out into space, wondering where these things are coming from. When in fact, I think the radio satellite dishes are pointing in the wrong place. They're a little bit more nearer to us than out there.
That's how I've always felt about it. Because if I even look at it this way, I'm a big fan of the idea of time travel. And if a species here, or us as humans, the way we're going with our planet, screw things up enough, and we find ourselves of an option to travel back, or travel to a parallel back, I should say, a timeline that's like ours but not ours. So we don't have to worry about the butterfly effect. We can go back millions of years, thousands of years, and just start over. You know, that, you know, to me that has to be a possibility, and it could explain, you know, there's other universes, other life can evolve. You know, everybody talks about reptilians. You know, we had reptilians that you know walked this planet. You know, millions of years ago. What if to say they just kept going and evolved? You know, and they have their ability to travel parallel timelines.
Well, that's really interesting you say that, Jason, because Barry came across some research from a paleontologist. It looked into this back in the 80s, didn't he, Barry?
Yeah, back in 1982, he was a Canadian paleontologist, and he theorized what a dinosaur would look like if it continued to evolve. And it was remarkable on what it actually looked like. You know, this bipedal creature that had huge eyes, and you know, it's what we of course would definitely recognize within the field as being reptilian, within the ufology field. And it's interesting that we also find that across in other aspects within the paranormal as well. Encounters, you know, you'll find certain similarities that will filter through. But there is a huge element of deceit within it. You know, there were experiments done in England within the Skull experiment, for instance, where this particular grey did manifest within the walls of this investigation. But it was also interesting to note that the others who were waiting to get through, who wanted to get through, who were really determined to get through to this world, were held back because they were not good for humanity. So that was an interesting series of experiments that lasted. It was about 5 years, wasn't it, Steve?
It was about 5 years. Yeah, I think they did some work on the backbone of Aleister Crowley because he had a very similar experience as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And that was another interesting aspect as well with the experiment that he did out in Egypt. He of course, you know, summoning up all different types of things, but he created this safe space that they like to call it, and that in itself was a deception as well, because he summoned this thing through, and it seemed that it didn't like it, and it stepped through his safe space and beat the life out of him. You know, these things that we're doing, we need to be very, very careful about what we're doing. We need to take sure, steady steps, and we need more information, and that's why Delta, or the Discovery Mapping System, is being designed.
You hear the stories of, you know, channelers like the Thal Society during the pre-Nazi Germany, channeling information, you know, and getting technology. They talk about that on Ancient Aliens all the time. But you wonder, you know, if these dimensions exist and they're parallel to us, you know, just our own consciousness be able to tap into it. They, you know, you talk about the paranormal, the demonic in itself. I had my own dark experience with something that levitated me off my bed and threw me down. I felt it. I don't even call it demonic. I felt it was something alien-like, even though it was just a black mass of shadow that tortured me for 4 months. You know, you wonder where, you know, all the stuff in the Bible, all this stuff, you know, I've always believed that, you know, aliens could be a lot in the Old Testament, but how much of that is just these parallel universes bleeding into ours, these doorways?
It's something that I've talked to Steve about in our long chats, and I just sum it up by the simple phrase: same phenomena, different mask.
Absolutely.
I could talk to you guys about all this stuff all night long, but we are coming down to the end of the show, and I really, really want to have you guys back on the show again if you do me that honor sometime to continue this conversation.
Absolutely, Jason. Yeah,
especially when it comes to the magnetic fields and the doorways. This is something on the top of my interest of the paranormal. I mean, I wrote short stories about it. It's just something that really interests me. The David Pilates, the missing people, all these things. I feel like it's, like I said, I named my show Paranormal Soup because I feel like the cryptoids, aliens, ghosts, all that is connected. It's all connected to that, and I would love to have you on to talk more about it.
Absolutely. We would love to. We love to. The research in magnetic anomalies is going to continue. We know that people that have been involved is the gate of the gods, which is situated in Peru. Experiments have been carried out there, where people have literally disappeared for half an hour after generating certain frequencies. We've been in talks with these people, and it's absolutely fascinating. I think there's an ancient knowledge that's been lost here, but I think it connects directly with the source. The source being the other plane, the other existence,
right.
Be it ufological, paranormal, supernatural, whatever we call it. It's got different mass. It's been integrating with humanity for thousands of years. But we want to try and find out as much as we possibly can by developing the right types of tools to tell us those answers. So we're hoping to share a lot more information as we continue.
Well,
I don't think we'll be invited back to Peru though after Wednesday, after we release our documentary.
Might not be safe for you guys. It might not be safe for you guys. Well,
no, that documentary is going to be out. Is that a couple of weeks away, Barry? I would say
this Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So this Wednesday?
Yeah, it's out on Wednesday. We'll be all over the place if you want.
Well, thank you guys so much. Like I said, we definitely want to get you back on, talk more about that. Everybody, check out Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Mera. Guys, you're amazing guests. Like I said, I can't wait to have you back on again. You have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right, guys, next Sunday we will be back. Same bad time, same bad channel. We will have, of course, I didn't have my calendar up. I got so sucked into this great conversation, and I really could have kept talking. Debbie A. Anderson will be back. The medium we had her on a few months ago. She was incredible. We're going to have her back on the show, so check it out. Same bad time, same bad channel, 10 p.m. to midnight Central Time, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Please go donate, subscribe, go to the website. We couldn't do all these great shows with all these great hosts without your help to keep the network alive. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next Sunday.